Good afternoon, everybody. I am Paulette Reed, CIECA's Technical Project Manager. The Collision Industries Electronic Commerce Association, or CIECA, develops and promotes electronic communication standards that allows the collision industry to be more efficient. Today's webinar is a technical webinar that focuses on the changes CIECA has made since the last release. We also provide education webinars to help educate both members and non-members on trends that impact systems, process, and exchange of data across the industry. Today, Dan Webster, Enlight's Principal Architect and CIECA's Architecture Committee Chair, is co-hosting this event with me. As we start the webinar, I want to remind you that there is no verbal communication between the participants and the presenter. If you have questions during the webinar, please type them in the question panel on the webinar screen, and we will answer as many questions as possible at the end of this presentation. Today's agenda, we're going to talk about our conversion document and then go around some AI messages and the assignment and estimate messages. To kick off the meeting, I'm going to let Dan discuss our EMS to BMS to CAPIS conversion document.
Thank you, Paulette. So my involvement with CIECA goes back to when EMS was our data standard, and 25 years ago we converted it to XML in what we called BMS. And for 12 years or so, we've been trying to move it that next step from XML standards to JSON and supporting REST and OpenAPI. And this is where that effort stands today. Paulette is showing you 3 little pictures of our Google Sheets spreadsheet where we try to get this done. And the reason it has to be clipped out like this is because it goes out to 26 columns or something and they won't all fit on your screen. But the point of it is, the premise is on the far left, we take all of the element names from BMS, our standard we've had around since 2003, and we alphabetized them and listed them from 1 to 1,987. And for each one, we strove to come up with the name it will be called in our new JSON standard called CAPIS for CIECA API specification. And so you see the first 5 of them here addressed. The only difference is in all these, our mapping, so to speak, is just using camel case, which starts every name with a lowercase letter, from the previous format, which for decades we also called camel case, but I've since learned this is supposed to be referred to as Pascal case. So we took the names and have a new name for a new CAPIS name for every BMS name. We found that it wouldn't be necessary for all of the things that are named in BMS to be named in CAPIS because we're simplifying and flattening the hierarchy of CAPIS as one does in JSON versus XML. And that is what's happening. There might not be an example of it here, but you'll see that sometimes we don't need to map something at all. Other times we change it just by the mere rule of how you style your text in JSON. And do we have more exhibits for this, Paulette?
Yes, I'm going to go ahead and do a real quick demo. I wanted to start out with our CIECA page, CIECA homepage, and here's I wanted to bring out that the Connects 2025 annual conference is in September, so 23rd. So please go to the homepage and get the more information on Connects. I know Stacy has a lot of great speakers that is ready to attend and to share some education with you guys at that event as well. So to find our CIECA standards that we're talking about today, we can go under standards. You will have to sign in if you're not signed in, as the login required shows. And then we go to the standard releases here, and you'll see all of our release information. And so today we're going to primarily focus on this EMS to BMS to CAPIS conversion document that we have been working on for the past 2 years. But below you can also see here's the CIECA API information that we do have. We have the release as whole, so you can bring the whole release down. If you just want to see the data dictionary, you can click on the data dictionary there. And then the master code list, schemas, and test instances, which is aligned with the CIECA BMS as well, where we have the release, then the data dictionary, master code list, and test instances, and then our EMS is at the bottom. So this is where you would get all of your release information. If you click on the EMS and the BMS, they have previous versions, and you can go back to past versions if you need a later version. But today I want to show you the EMS to CAPIS conversion document. As Dan was saying, we had the small clips on the screen, and this is what it looks like in full. We start with our BMS field names. A lot of this information that was filled out for the BMS was to help the architecture team and our numerous committees that are looking at this information to know where it was used, how it's used in the BMS. So that was what our request here, and then our paths maybe, because that was easier. If we had a code list, then we have the values in these two fields, and then we have the EMS, which is way simpler. Let's find one that has, so here's some of the EMS information, and then we have our CAPIS information to the side. And again, you could see, as Dan said, actual pickup is no longer being used, and we have that as a flattened event that is date and time and contact. So we have that information all in here. So R is our CAPIS field name, and V is approved. So everything right now in this document is approved by the architecture team. Then if we have an API request that is using it today, it'll be an S. Proposed changes is if basically when we was wanting to, when architecture was going through and working on these individually, that we were would put a proposed change or name in there. Reviewed by, that's the different committees that have reviewed it. And then if it's included in CAPIS already, it will have the version. And then we have the description, if it is in CAPIS. And like I said, Y is an explanation. And Dan will go over these later as our guidelines and why we have that information and why we're using that.
Yeah, sure enough. So the very first thing was extracting all of the element names, tag names, we called them, from XML for column A. And then, as I showed you, it's pretty simple to have a spreadsheet do a conversion of the first letter of every tag to lowercase, but there was a lot more going into it. Once you gather all 2,000 of these tags and look at them at once, if pouring over it week by week for a year and a half is at once, you get things thinking of them at the same time. And why wasn't this one named like the other one that's very similar? And the reasons were very good for the history of EMS and BMS, because things were added over a period of about 30 years by whatever concerned members of CIECA from week to week or every 6 months for 30 years. But when we see them all together, I decided that before I even brought them to the architecture committee to start this process that Paulette is talking about, that some of them needed to change. And then that's the appropriately named column Y, tells you why we did it. And I felt I needed to explain myself for some of these things. And after a while, the committee jointly came up with the idea of making a rules sheet behind this. And if you were changing one of these tag names from BMS to CAPIS, you needed to cite some rule for why you did it. And how do you want to go through that? Paulette, do you want to look at all the rules on their own sheet or look for places where they've been applied?
We can look high level here. Here's our rules. Again, some of them are very simple, as you see. The acronyms, they're just words, and how we change those.
And if you're a fan of geekery, then you want to come to our architecture meetings. We're talking about stuff like whether pickup is one word or two, whether the U in it is uppercase or lowercase, all that kind of thing. But one of the things that started this right off the top was that the tags, as you're familiar with them, are a bunch of common words in English that apply to our industry that are all mashed together into one identifier. And we found that over the years in BMS, some of those words that we mashed together were misspelled. So one of the things we did was make a rule, as if you needed a rule, that the only things that can be in a tag are a correctly spelled word or a accepted acronym or an accepted abbreviation. And we'll see changes in here that were because we had to match a acronym that the industry likes to use, or we've standardized on an abbreviation. You see the one in 56, use UUID for universally unique identifier and not UID or GUID. We had a mix of all of those before. One or other cases in 50, when we say flattened, we mean that instead of breaking things down from a repair line to part info to OEM info to alternate info, we would put those at the same level of hierarchy. And if they needed to be detailed more clearly, you could just add that clarifying detail as part of the tag name. So when you flatten like that, some of the tag names that were just the name of a lower level grouping that we eliminated goes away. You have fewer levels of hierarchy, and you refer to that process as flattening. Then in 74, like I say, if you really want to geek out, you see we don't have hyphenated words in the the property names. So if something is properly hyphenated in an English dictionary, we would capitalize the word after the hyphen and then mash them together. So that might be just about enough on this. I guess this one here, arrays. So in XML, arrays were a concept, but they're not really a part of XML structure. Any tag in XML can appear only once, be optional, or between those two things, it could repeat an infinite number of times. And the programmers among us would refer to one that can repeat an unbounded number of times as an array, but it isn't really an array. In JSON, on the other hand, they really are arrays, and you have an array that has a name and then a bracketed list of its items after that. And the rule from our style guide is arrays ought to have a plural name, usually ending in S, but not all plurals work that way. And then the ideal array would be made up of individual items under them that are the singular version of that same word. Okay, let's talk about something a little less dry. Paulette, what else have you got?
So just to go over with everybody, just like we had in the BMS, we have an abbreviation list, so we can share that in this document. And then we have an acronym list as well. And as Dan said, we have a not allowed, and these are the things that are not allowed and how we recommend using them.
Yep, and this is our answer to folks who say, I liked the tag we had before. Why did you change it? And we have explanations and can defend our positions on this stuff.
So with talking about our EMS to BMS to CAPIS, the architecture of that, Dan hit a little bit of that when he was talking about flattening, but here's a couple of the things that the difference in between the BMS.
Yeah, sure enough. And that top one, this is a way to, not all BMS hierarchy levels are carried over to CAPIS. And this is exactly the concept I referred to on the last sheet we were looking at as flattening. So that's what we mean by that, two ways to say the thing. Naming starts with lowercase and uses camel case, mashing the words together with the first letter of each word capitalized. The code lists we would have in a BMS and EMS and EDI, we've forever had code lists. It's one of the main things about a standards organization like CAPIS. And one thing we did in this mapping of BMS tags to CAPIS ones was a rule that says a property in your schema that uses one of these code lists, the property name itself will end with code. And we find that helpful for understanding it, and something we're going through right now in the actual upcoming release of a new version of CAPIS. And the thing I talked about most recently on the line 50 of that spreadsheet was array names for repeating BMS elements are plural.
So now we wanted to kind of get into the work that our committees are doing and working with the architecture team. So one of the new messages that CIECA is working on is our AI API. So this is something that is not part of the BMS and is brand new. So the AI committee, of course, because it was new, the committee started with a knowledge share. So we got experts in the field, got a behind the scenes look at the process, worked on some of the requirement, and got to see a lot of use cases from our industry's best. And then the information from that knowledge share was turned into the data and the AI schema. So that committee worked to approve this information that they gathered with the architecture committee. The architecture reviewed and sent some recommendations, and it's been back and forth for a while. And the AI committee has enhanced the schema, and now currently the architecture and AI committee is going over and approving the data and making sure that this is good before our next release. So we expect that our AI message will be in the October release of this year. We was really hoping to get it into this release, but we had a lot going on in architecture to finish that EMS conversion and BMS conversion document. So if you have an AI message that you are interested in creating, you can log in to our CIECA standards once it's released, and you could see that in our documents earlier, you can go to the EMS to BMS to CAPIS document. You could see a tabs down here at the bottom that also have claim. The claim is the message that we had in our original CAPIS. And then we also have vehicle. So these are just breaking down all the data fields that we have in CAPIS. And you can see here that in that API request, it's going to say this is a vehicle or claim. If you wanted to see everything that we've worked on with AI, it's also in here. So this isn't the actual schema yet, but we do have the data identified and recognized in our current conversion document. So you can either go there, or another way of getting that is if when you're in there, you can filter on everything that says AI in that column. And of course, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me, or you can join the AI committee. then the October release, we're hoping to have the schema, and as well the AI and architecture team will continue to work on the technical, and the SAB committee and the AI committee will work on getting that documentation and the presentation of how we want these new messages to look for everybody. We also have the assignment and estimate, which is our VDI committee. They went through all of the BMS and EMS fields that was in that conversion document to approve the naming of the standards. The committee is focusing on assignment API at this time, and after the assignment is completed, the VDI committee will focus on the estimate. And much like before, you can go out there and you can see the assignment fields that have already been identified in our EMS to BMS conversion document. So we can log in to that and see those standards. And here's our ones that we have already identified for assignment. And again, you can filter on those fields to do anything that has assignment. Reach out to me. And this committee is continuing to work. And again, they're focusing on the assignment right now, and then they will focus on the estimate. So that committee meets 2 times a month. The AI committee is currently meeting 1 time a month. So again, we would love to have your participation and help us get that information out to everybody in October.
And Paulette, let me mention about the assignment and estimate. So it has been a couple years now. We've had the availability of representing a claim in JSON with a vehicle in it and the parties and the insurance information. And that's a schema available from CIECA, but we understand that the folks in the business are also really interested in the other stuff they're already doing with VMS and EMS, and obviously want us to hurry and have a standard for all that. But the one complaint we heard the most was, at least tell us what the names of the fields that we used to use in DBase and XML are going to be in the JSON and CAPIS world. And that's really the genesis of why we have the spreadsheet of every name there, even though we haven't formally built all the assignment ones and estimate ones yet into schemas. That's just what I wanted to say about that that applies to estimate and to assignments.
So at this time in our EMS to BMS to conversion document, we do not have estimate identified in S because, again, we're working on the assignment part. But if you go back to the master, you would be able to look at this column D and pull out anything that says estimate. Do a filter on that, and that will bring out everything that VDI committee has already looked at. And so you could see that tow condition is now tow condition code. It's in vehicle already, and that the VDI committee, these are the ones that have been reviewed by VDI and then approved. So we have a lot of information in here, but that's how you can kind of get to look at any messages that you have or that you are wanting to look at that you already have a BMS. You could do a filter here and see what kind of data changes or what was changed in those fields. So I know that we had a couple questions. Stacy, are you able to see those? I can't.
Sure. Our first question, I'll just bring it up. What does API request mean?
So
the API.
API is the application programming interface, and you send via an API requests and get in response responses. And is that one of the column headings they're asking about, Paulette?
I think so.
So before in XML, if you could go look at that column, D as in Delta, we actually called the messages requests, the ones that end in RQ, or they were responses, ones that end in RS. And an API request often is the exact same payload for the request and response. You just fill in different parts of it. But API request would be a schema for the message payload you'd send to request something from a application programming interface.
Yeah, so if the API request here, so if it says vehicle, that means that we have that in our vehicle schema in our CAPIS 0.0.1 version, our new version. And then again, so if it's in the AI, there's just a way of sorting so that you could see that information. And again,
And they're
you
the
could
ones
go,
that aren't exist, right?
yes.
Paulette. So if we would filter on this column for things that are non-blank, these would be the things that are actually represented in real schemas that are part of the CAPIS standard today that you could get to by the method that Paulette mentioned earlier from our webpage.
So here's the CAPIS, and then if we go back and we look at our schemas, more schemas, you'll see that in the version that we have now, we have claims schema, we have a code list definitions, we have a party schema, a parts invoice, a parts message. This is our big one that we was looking at, and then we have the vehicle, and then we have a combination of the vehicles, parties, and claims, just to show how those can work together. So those, if it says it's in vehicle, then it means we have one of these out here, and then if it says claim, it shows there, and then the AI is what we have identified for AI and assignment.
And you could actually click through to a test instance for claim and actually see what we're talking about when we say a claim API request. Right there. And there it is, a claim API request.
Do we have any other questions?
No, not at this time. But the webinar will be recorded, and we encourage everyone to reach out with any questions.
Okay, well, we hope to see you all at Connects. And again, if you would like to join our architecture committee or any of our other committees, you can do that as well going to CIECA.com. And thank you again.